Hola, hola, ¿cómo están? Bueno, el tópico de hoy es un poco complejo. Today's topic is a little bit complex, a little bit tricky. I am going to do my best to walk you through it and make it appear as not as complicated as it is. Let's see if I succeed. You will let me know. Direct and indirect object pronouns combined, los pronombres de complemento directo e indirecto usados juntos. So far, we have learned about direct objects and pronouns and indirect objects and pronouns. The first topic, direct objects and pronouns, were covered in Spanish 1010. That was lesson 5, I think. But anyway, that was Spanish 1010. So we will have to do some review, some brief review. And then in Spanish 1020, I think last month or yeah, by the beginning of the semester, we covered indirect objects and pronouns. So let's start with direct objects because that was covered a long time ago and I bet you guys are a little bit rusty. So let's remember. Let's remember and let's start here. Let's remember why do we use direct object pronouns, okay? ¿Por qué utilizamos pronombres de objeto directo? We have some dialogues here. This is the first dialogue I'm gonna show you, and I want you to take a few moments to analyze the dialogue. Analiza estos diálogos. ¿Cuál es el objeto directo? ¿Qué problema identificas? So let's remember what a direct object is. A direct object is what is or answers the question of what is being verbed. In other words, what is the direct recipient of the verb action? So let's take a look at this dialogue here. ¿Comes una pizza? Sí, como una pizza. ¿Dónde comes una pizza? Como una pizza en el restaurante italiano. ¿Con quién comes una pizza? Como una pizza con mi hermano. So we have a verb, which is comer, right? And what is the direct object of the verb? It's una pizza, right? Una pizza is your direct object in the sentence. What is being verbed? Una pizza, a pizza. Now, what is the problem with this dialogue or a dialogue like this? Pizza is repeated too many times, so the dialogue becomes repetitive, monotonous, unnatural. Nobody speaks like that, right? We can all agree on that. That's why we use direct object pronouns, okay? So if we remember this is review. So if we remember from Spanish 1010, these are your direct object pronouns. If the direct object of a sentence is yo, then you replace that yo with me. If it's tú, that's te. If it's él, that would be replaced with lo. If it's ella would be replaced with la, and that's the case of la pizza before, and we will delve into that a little deeper in a second. If usted, you formal, is the direct object of your sentence, you will replace usted with either lo or la, depending on the gender of that person you're addressing as usted. If it's nosotros, nosotras, you will replace that with nos. If it's ellos, los. If it's ellas, las. And ustedes, you guys, you plural. Again, it depends on the gender of the group. Mixed group, los, or male group, los, and female group, las. All right? So let's do a little bit of practice briefly. Let's take a look at these examples here, and we're going to do three things. Identifica el objeto directo en la frase. We are going to look at these examples, and we're going to recognize the direct object. Then number two, número dos, decide el pronombre correcto. Let's decide on the correct pronoun. And number three, let's replace the direct object with the appropriate pronoun. So let's remember how to do this, okay? For number one, we have una pizza. That's our direct object. That's what's being verbed. Okay, what do you eat? Una pizza. That's your direct object. Now, let's go back to the previous slide that has the chart of pronouns. Una pizza would fall under ella. Remember that in Spanish, we don't have it to refer to objects in third person. So depending on the gender of the object, la pizza happens to be a feminine noun, then ella is your point of reference. So you will replace la pizza with the pronoun la. Let's do it. Okay. Now, where did you put that pronoun? Let's put it in brackets here. La pizza. Remember that when we're replacing the direct object with a pronoun, we throw the pronoun directly before the verb. So the resulting statement, once we have replaced tú la comes, right? That la right here refers to la pizza. And I'm going to go ahead and underline it, highlight it in yellow. See? Tú la comes. Let's keep these two because they have two verbs together, which is a little bit more complicated. Let's do the examples with only one verb, a single verb. Number four, tú llamas a nosotros. Let's see how we replace nosotros as a direct object. That would be nos. See? So you call us. Us is the direct object of the sentence. So we replace it with nos and we say tú nos llamas. You call us. That's the way it works in Spanish. It's a little bit different than in English. The order, the positioning of the pronoun is different. Tú nos llamas. Let's do number six because we have only one verb here. Ella invita a mí a la fiesta. So I am the direct object of the invitation. She invites me to the party. So when I am the direct object, I replace myself with me. ¿Sí? Número seis. Ella me invita. ¿Sí? Number seven. Nosotros conocemos a ti. So that a ti, that's tú, right? So we know you. You are the direct object. And when you informal is the direct object, we replace it with te. Nosotros te conocemos. All right, so far so good. Okay, so those are examples where we have only one verb. What happens when we have two verbs? Like in number two, we have yo estoy comprando. That is, I am buying. And then your direct object, unos zapatos nuevos, that's masculine plural noun. So we replace it with los. That would be ellos, los zapatos, right? Los. Now, where do we put that? And let's put here nos for consistency. Let's put me right here. And let's put te. Okay? And then for los zapatos, that would be los. Now, positioning that los. You can put that los right before the first verb, which is estar, conjugated to yo. Yo los estoy comprando. But you can also say, yo estoy comparándolos. Attach that pronoun at the end of the verb right here, the second verb. Okay. Another example with two verbs together with no change of subject. Yo tengo que ver a Martín. This is a case of tener plus que plus a verb in the infinitive to express obligation. So we have Martín, which is a guy. It's él, right? So you replace Martín with lo, right? And then you can do the same as within number 2. We can put that lo before tengo. Yo lo tengo que ver o yo tengo que verlo. You can put the pronoun either before the first verb, which is conjugated, or after the second verb, in this case, ver, verlo. ¿Sí? And then for number 5, la profesora está ayudando a ustedes. Ustedes is your direct object, so let's make it a mixed group. That would be los, right? If we go back to the chart here, ustedes should be replaced with either los or las, depending on the gender of the group. Let's assume this is a mixed group of students being helped by this professor here. La profesora está ayudando a ustedes, so replace that ustedes with los. And the resulting statement would be, la profesora los está ayudando. But we can also say, la profesora está ayudándolos. You choose where you place your pronoun when you have two verbs, either before the first conjugated verb or after the second verb. All right, so far so good. So this is good review for direct objects and pronouns. Again, let me leave that there for a few moments. Those are your direct object pronouns. And let's go ahead. There is a sheet here that I created for you. Let's go ahead and fill in the charts with the two sets of object pronouns. We have reviewed the direct object pronouns. So we have me, te, lo, la, nos, os, los, and las. That's it for your direct object pronouns. Now, indirect object pronouns, when do we have an indirect object? The indirect object answers the questions for whom or to whom. In other words, the indirect recipient of the action of the verb. So let's go to the pizza example. And then let's replace comer with comprar. Tú compras, to buy, right? Tú compras una pizza para tu mamá. In this case, we have direct object, una pizza. What do you buy? What is being verbed? A pizza. For whom or to whom? For your mom. So, tu mamá here is your indirect object. Remember, indirect object pronouns. Now, going back to this document here, let's remember the indirect object pronouns. They're a little bit different than direct. So, me, te, le for él, ella, usted, nos, os, and les. Again, this is review. You already studied this earlier in Spanish 1020. Okay, me, te, le, nos, os, les. So this is a comparison here between your direct object pronouns and your indirect object pronouns. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. Here we are. So, tú la compras para tu mamá, right? Tú la compras para tu mamá. So we have the indirect object here stated. How do we replace the indirect object? So let's get rid of this and let's say, tú le compras una pizza a tu mamá. Okay, here we're not replacing la pizza yet as a direct object with a direct object pronoun, but we are replacing the indirect object with a pronoun, the corresponding pronoun. Let's remember le because it's tu mamá. That's ella. Okay? Le, ella. All right? So far, so good. So remember, él, ella, usted will take le as the indirect object pronoun. That's what you're seeing here. Tú le compras una pizza a tu mamá. This is your indirect object. Now, let's do a few exercises. We did a few exercises here to remember how to position direct object pronouns. Let's do the same with the indirect object pronouns. Let's do a few examples. Okay. Right here, completa los espacios en blanco con el pronombre de objeto indirecto apropiado. So let's figure out how to fill in the blanks with the corresponding indirect object pronoun. Okay? So let's pretend we're at a restaurant, en un restaurante. And let me go ahead and get rid of the underlining, which is distracting. Here we go. We are at a restaurant. Let me make this bigger so you can see it more clearly. This is the context of a restaurant. And then we have a nosotros as your indirect object right here. And sirven, that would be ellos, los camareros, the servers. See? The servers serve lunch at 1. To whom or for whom? To us. So how do we replace at nosotros? We know that if nosotros is the indirect object, we say, los camareros nos sirven el almuerzo a nosotros. Okay? For number 2, let's do yo. We know it's yo because we have compro, right? We know that yo is your subject. And then we have a todos mis amigos as the indirect object. For whom or to whom? To all of my friends. And what's the direct object? Cervezas, beer. So if the indirect object is a todos mis amigos, that would be ellos. How do we replace ellos as indirect object? We do les. Yo les compro cervezas a todos mis amigos. Let me highlight this for clarity. Right? We have a nosotros again, so let's do something different. Let's do a ti. So that's you as an indirect object. And of course, we have puedo. We know that the subject is yo because we have puedo. That's the yo form of poder. And then if it's you, if you are my indirect object, then we say yo te puedo recomendar el arroz con pollo y el flan a ti. See? And then me for number 5, that's me as an indirect object. And then I'm asking you, can you pass me the bread, please? Tú. And then if I am the indirect object, we know that because it says a mí right here, then we say, tú me pasas el pan, por favor. Okay, so far so good. Now, I am going to add a layer of complexity here. Again, let's come down here and take a closer look at the contrasts or the comparison between direct object pronouns and indirect object pronouns. Why is this important? Because I'm about to teach you how to use them together in a sentence. In other words, how to replace both the direct and the indirect objects in a sentence using pronouns. Okay? Let's take a look at this PowerPoint here. Not this one, but I have another one that explains the subject. Here we are, okay? So bear with me. And let's see where we can put this so it's not intrusive. Okay, direct and indirect object pronouns combined. Spanish direct and indirect object pronouns may be used together in the same sentence, just as in English. As with most all pronoun use, the objective is to reduce the length, complexity, or redundancy of the language. Okay. Examples. Juan, ¿me traes la película? Juan, will you bring me? This is the indirect object. I am the indirect object. Can you bring the movie to me? Will you bring me the movie? Then how would Julián answer? Te la traigo en un momento. Here we have our two pronouns combined. So let's see, let's analyze, let's break it down. What is happening here? We have la película, the movie, that's our direct object. What is being verbed? La película, right? The movie, that's our direct object, the recipient, the direct recipient of the action of the verb. Now, to whom or for whom is Julián bringing the movie? To me. We know that because the indirect object is stated right here in the question. ¿Me traes la película? Will you bring the movie to me? And now Julián answers, te la traigo en un momento. So what is this la accounting for? It is replacing la película, feminine noun. So that would be ella, right? And then te, that would be, I'll bring it to you. Remember, this is a dialogue dynamic. So Julián is addressing now the person using te in the to form. So I will bring it to you in a moment. What is going on here? The order is important. When we are using direct and indirect object pronouns together, the indirect object pronoun will always come first, followed immediately by the direct object pronoun. And they always have to be like that, okay? Think of them as a cluster. They don't need or want or like to be separated. Indirect comes first, direct immediately after the indirect, okay? So, as with all object pronouns, double object pronouns are placed before a conjugated verb. Now, if you have two verbs together with no change of subject, we will see that we can place them at the end of the second verb as well. But we're not there yet. Te la traigo. So, the indirect object pronoun, that's the first one, te, precedes the direct object pronoun. Right? So far, so good. That's the way this works. We also may place the pronouns after an infinitive or a gerund, but both pronouns must remain adjacent to each other. As I said, they don't like to be separated. That is, both pronouns must come either in front of the conjugated verb or after the infinitive or gerund. Julián, ¿me traes la película? Same example. Te la voy a traer en un momento. I am going to bring it to you in a moment. Voy a traértela en un momento, so we can place the cluster te la before the first conjugated verb, which is ir, yo voy, or we can place those te la right after the infinitive traer to form one big word. Voy a traértela en un momento. Both are valid and both are correct and they are used interchangeably. Te la estoy trayendo ahora mismo, estoy trayéndotela ahora mismo. Same thing, right? Notice that when the pronouns are placed after the infinitive or gerund, they are closed up to each other and to the verb. Note also the written accent that must be added. Trayéndotela, right? You're always welcome to pause the lecture and stay with the slide for a moment so that you can process it. I know that I'm going fast. Now, let's take a look at this. This is pretty cool. Celo, cela, celos, celas. What is this about? Let's see. I threw the ball to you. Yo te tiré el balón. I threw it to you. El balón, direct object, masculine, lo, right? Yo te lo tiré. We're replacing both the indirect object, to you, and el balón, the ball, that's a masculine noun, lo. So indirect first, direct immediately after. Yo te lo tiré. Correct. Now, you threw the ball to me. Tú me tiraste el balón. Tú me lo tiraste. You threw it, the same balloon or ball, to me. You threw it to me. That's correct. Now, what happens when we have él, ella, usted as the indirect objects? I threw the ball to him, a él. Yo le tiré el balón. So the resulting statement will be yo le lo tiré, right? Logically, we have our indirect object pronoun first for él, that would be le, followed by el balón replaced by lo, yo le lo tiré. But what's the problem here? We cannot le lo or le la or les lo in Spanish. When both pronouns start with an L, we cannot do that. So what do we do instead? We replace that le, the indirect object pronoun le, with se. You can lelo in Spanish. That's exactly what it says down here at the bottom, right? That's pretty funny. We say yo se lo tiré, se lo tiré. All right? Still with me? I know, it's weird. Le and les must change to se before lo, la, los, or las. This is your rule right here. I am circling it with my cursor. Le and les must change to se before lo, la, los, or las. Okay? The context of the situation or the previous statement or question will clarify the meaning of se. Notice the following slide. ¿Le prestas el dinero a Lupita? Will you lend Lupita the money? No, no se lo presto. Es mucho dinero. ¿Sí? We cannot say no le lo presto. It's a rule. ¿Queremos comprarles los juguetes a los niños? No, we want to buy the toys for the children, right? Sí, vamos a comprárselos mañana. You cannot say vamos a comprarlelos mañana. That's why the say is there. The combinations of object pronouns in Spanish are as follows. Me lo, me la, that's completely fine. Me los, me las. Te lo, te la, that's good. Te los, te las. But se lo, se la, never le lo, le la. Se lo, se las. Se lo, se la, se los, se las. Nos, lo, nos, la. Nos, los, nos, las. Os, lo, os, la. Os, los, os, las. Then again, for third person plural, se lo, se las, se los, se las. I'm leaving that there for a few moments. You can pause as well. And we will go ahead and do some practice. Let's go for it. Back to the Word document. I think that's it for, yes, that's it for this presentation. Okay. So, which pronoun comes first, indirect or direct? What happens when both pronouns start with the letter L? We already answered that question. Your indirect object pronouns will always come first. And when both pronouns start with the letter L, your le or les need to become se. Now, the good stuff. Replace or substitute both objects with pronouns and rewrite the sentence. I am going to leave the sentences there for you to figure them out. And they all have two verbs to make it more challenging for you. You need a good challenge today. So I'm going to leave that there. You are going to pause the video. You are going to work on the examples. When you have worked on the examples, resume your playing. And here I am to give you the analysis and the correct answers. For number one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and underline the direct object. And the indirect object I'm going to do in italics. And I'm gonna go ahead and do that for everything. Las galletas, that's the cookies, that's your direct object for number 2. And me is your indirect object. Here for C, te is your indirect object. And el secreto, the secret, is your direct object. For letter D, estas invitaciones is your direct object. These invitations and a mis amigos is the indirect object. And then nos for letter E is your indirect object to us or for us. And the problem is our direct object. Now let's go ahead and replace. Here we have, voy a comprarle estas flores a mi amigo. So what? Estas flores, these flowers. For whom or to whom? A mi amigo. So, a mi amigo. Le voy a comprar. Well, actually, I should be replacing everything at this point. So, estas flores would be las, right? And then a mi amigo, that would be le. So, the resulting statement should be le las voy a comprar. Or voy a comprar lelas. But we know that we cannot lelo or lela. So, se las voy a comprar, voy a comprárselas. Right? Letra B. Mis padres me mandaron las galletas ayer. Mandaron, that's a preterite. They sent me the cookies yesterday. And we know this is a preterite statement because of the verb form, aron and ayer, yesterday. Now, the cookies, las galletas, replace the cookies with las and then me with me, right? To me. For whom or to whom? To me. So, me las mandaron ayer. Letra C, letter C. Te voy a contar el secreto. Here we only have one verb, so that's the only possibility for letter B. Okay, for letter C, we have two verbs, ir and contar. Te voy a contar el secreto. So we have two options. Te lo voy a contar. Lo, because it's el secreto, right? El, so replace it with lo. And te, because you are the indirect object. For whom or to whom? To you. Te lo voy a contar o voy a contártelo. Okay. Letra D. Necesito darles estas invitaciones a mis amigos. A mis amigos, that would be les. Estas invitaciones, that would be replaced with las. So, se las necesito dar. Necesito dárselas. The last one, we are the indirect object for whom or to whom, to us or for us, and the direct object, el problema. El problema, that's a masculine noun, ends in ma, and the article is telling you it's masculine. El problema, masculine noun. So you replace it with lo. Ella nos lo está explicando. She's explaining it to us right now. Or ella está explicándonoslo. Super big word. All right. Let me leave that there for a few moments. Compare with your answers, with your efforts. Make any corrections. Let it sink in. I know it's not easy. It's a tricky topic, as I said in the beginning. And let me know if you have any question. I hope it makes sense. That's all I have for today. I think we covered a lot of ground. Let me know. See you next time.